Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take your complex sources and unearth the most fascinating insights, turning information overload into aha moments. Today, we're embarking on a truly profound deep dive. We're looking into a topic that touches every single one of us, yet often remains shrouded in mystery and discomfort: human decomposition. We're going to explore it not just as a biological endpoint, but as this dynamic, multifaceted process intrinsically linked to life itself, from our individual development to societal structure, cultural norms, ethics, and even the planet's ecological balance.
And what's genuinely transformative about this particular deep dive is how it leverages an AI-driven scientific study to really unravel these complex interdependencies. The report, it's titled Decomposing Humanity. An AI-driven scientific study gives us a holistic understanding that truly transcends traditional disciplinary boundaries. Our mission today is to uncover how AI is revolutionizing our grasp of this universal phenomenon, and importantly, what that means for you in our world.
So let's unpack this. Let's see how this cutting-edge approach helps us get deeper understandings into life's ultimate transformation. Okay, let's start with the basics then. What actually happens to a body after death? Our source describes human decomposition as predictable, sequential, but with a rate that's highly variable. It kicks off right after death and then progresses through 5 distinct stages.
Right, it's not just one thing happening. It's more like a journey unfolding over time. And each stage brings its own specific biological, chemical, and physical changes.
The very first phase, that's the fresh stage, typically lasts, a day or two?
Roughly, yes.
And this is where something pretty incredible happens internally. Autolysis. Think of it as the body's own cells starting a kind of self-digestion. Deprived of oxygen, cells burst, they release their own enzymes, and this starts breaking down tissues, increases acidity.
Exactly. And alongside that internal process, you start seeing external changes. Things like algor mortis, that's the body temperature dropping to match the surroundings. Then there's rigor mortis, the temporary stiffening people often hear about. It usually starts around maybe 3 hours after death, peaks at 12 hours or so, and then dissipates by about 72 hours as the muscles themselves start to decompose. And livor mortis, or lividity, that's the blood pooling due to gravity, causing that reddish-purple discoloration in the lower parts of the body. What's really profound here, I think, is that death isn't instantaneous. Brain cells die quickly, sure, minutes maybe, but muscle cells, hours. And bone and skin cells can actually survive for days. It really underscores that death is a complex process, not just a switch flipping off.
Okay, so after the fresh stage, we enter the bloat stage. This is generally from day 2 to 6.
That's the typical window, yeah.
And this is where things get, visually quite dramatic, as the source puts it. As tissues break down further, microorganisms from the digestive system really proliferate. They start digesting tissues and excreting gases like methane, hydrogen, and those really foul-smelling sulfur compounds, putrescine and cadaverine.
Right. Those gases build up internally, and it can cause the body to swell significantly, sometimes, even doubling in size. That internal pressure can lead to things like skin slippage and the expulsion of a dark, really foul-smelling liquid called purge fluid from the orifices. There's also a critical shift happening in the bacterial populations, moving from aerobic, oxygen-loving species to anaerobic ones that thrive without oxygen. And it's these potent odors that act almost like a beacon, attracting insects and scavengers from, surprisingly far away.
Wow. Okay, so by day 5 to 11, we're into the active decay stage.
Correct.
Here, the source says soft tissues are liquefying, skin often turns black, and there's significant mass loss. Insect activity is highly pronounced now.
Very much so. Blowflies, for instance, are laying eggs in orifices and any wounds. And their larvae, the maggots, are incredibly active feeders.
And these maggots are key for forensics.
Absolutely key. What's truly astonishing is how these tiny creatures become like nature's biological clocks for forensic investigators. The size and developmental stage of the maggots are crucial for estimating the minimum time since death because their development is highly dependent on temperature. And different insect species colonize the body in predictable waves, which adds another layer of information. Oh, and there's another fascinating thing that can happen here, especially in damp conditions. Adipocere, or corpse wax.
Corpse wax.
Yeah, imagine the body fats turning into this waxy, almost soap-like substance. It actually inhibits further decomposition and can preserve the corpse or parts of it for really extended periods. Quite remarkable.
Incredible. Okay, then we move to the advanced decay stage. Roughly day 10 to 25.
That's about right. The pace slows down here.
Most soft tissue is gone by this point. The remains are discolored, often blackened. And you said the rate of decay slows considerably.
It does, but this stage has a really profound, often unseen ecological impact. A decomposing body basically becomes a concentrated patch of fertilizer. It releases substantial nutrients back into the soil. We're talking about roughly 32 grams of nitrogen, 10 grams of phosphorus, 4 grams of potassium, and 1 gram of magnesium for every single kilogram of dry body mass.
Wow, that's a lot.
It is. The sudden influx initially can actually kill the plant life right around the body. It's too much too fast. But then it prompts this surge in growth later on. That's what leads to those unusually green, really robust patches of vegetation you sometimes see, subtly marking a decomposition site. It's nature's ultimate recycling program in action. Kind of biological generosity, as the source puts it.
That's a great way to put it. Finally, we reach the dry skeletonized remains stage. This can take weeks or even years.
Weeks to years, yes, depending heavily on the conditions. At this point, usually only bones, hair, and maybe some cartilage or dried tissue remain. The body has dried out, and skeletonization is well underway.
And the bones themselves continue to change.
They do. They undergo bone weathering. It's the natural breakdown of skeletal remains, and it's influenced heavily by environmental conditions. Hot, dry conditions speed it up. Cool, wet conditions slow it down. Repeated cycles of wet and dry can cause layers to peel off. That's delamination and surface cracking. Eventually, even nails and teeth might fall out. It's a complete return to the elements.
So we've outlined these stages, but you mentioned the rate is highly variable. What really drives that variability? Because it seems like bodies can decompose very differently.
That's a key question, absolutely. The rate is highly influenced by a combination of factors. We can group them into intrinsic factors related to the individual and extrinsic factors, which are about the environment.
Okay, let's start with intrinsic factors, things specific to the person. Body composition and size matter, you said?
They do. For example, juveniles and infants generally decompose faster. They have smaller mass, a higher surface area to volume ratio, and their bones are less mineralized.
What about overall body weight in adults? Is heavier, faster, or slower?
Well, that's actually debated. Some studies suggest faster decomposition in heavier individuals because of increased fluid content. Others point to the insulating properties of body fat potentially slowing the initial cooling phase. However, an obese individual's body might experience a more forceful rupture during the bloat stage because more gas builds up. So it's complex.
Age also plays a role. Not just infant versus adult.
Right. While infants might decompose faster post-mortem, elderly individuals could experience accelerated skeletal decay later on due to lower bone mineral density, like from osteoporosis.
And health status at the time of death must be a huge factor.
A massive one. Chronic illness, sepsis, any open injuries, these can significantly alter decay rates. Sepsis or open wounds, for instance, basically provide easy entry points for microorganisms, speeding things up considerably. Even having a fever at the time of death or conditions like diabetes or cancer and the treatments associated with them can profoundly modify decomposition patterns.
Okay, now let's shift to extrinsic factors in the environment. Temperature seems like the obvious big one.
It's probably the primary driver, yes. High temperatures accelerate decay, almost like putting it on fast forward. Cold temperatures, conversely, dramatically slow it down or can even halt it almost completely. Think about those bodies preserved on Mount Everest.
Right.
But interestingly, hot, arid conditions can also preserve bodies, but through mummification by drying them out completely before significant decay can happen.
And humidity. Water seems like it would speed things up.
It's complex. Humidity and moisture have varied influences. Rain, for example, might increase decay rates during the active decay stage. But paradoxically, very high moisture levels can lead to that adipocere formation we talked about, which slows things down. So both excessive moisture, leading to adipocere, and extreme dryness, leading to mummification, can actually retard the overall process.
Okay, what about oxygen? Does being buried make a difference?
Profoundly. Oxygen availability really impacts the pathways of decomposition. Burial, by limiting oxygen and also restricting insect access, generally slows decay considerably. It favors anaerobic decomposition breakdown without oxygen. Similarly, bodies in cold water decompose more slowly, mainly due to the lower temperatures and also reduced oxygen levels.
And you mentioned something important about anaerobic decomposition earlier.
Yes, environmentally important. Anaerobic decomposition, the kind that happens in low oxygen environments like deep burial or even landfills, produces potent greenhouse gases, methane and carbon dioxide specifically.
Sure.
So it contributes to broader environmental concerns. It's something to think about with waste management too.
Definitely. And the specific location matters too, right? Like soil type.
Hugely significant. We mentioned burial depth. Deeper burials slow rates further. But soil chemistry is key too. Bogs, for example, are famously preservative environments because they have a highly acidic pH and low oxygen. In general, acidic soil can accelerate decomposition significantly. The source says up to 3 times faster than alkaline soil.
3 times, wow.
And finally, we can't forget the biological agents. Microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, they are the primary engines driving the whole process, releasing nutrients back into the system. Insects, especially those early colonizers like blowflies, are crucial players, and their predictable succession patterns are absolutely vital for forensic PMI estimations, the postmortem interval. And of course, larger scavenger animals can also significantly impact the rate, sometimes removing large portions of tissue very quickly.
Okay, this is where our sources really pivot towards the future. The study we're diving into emphasizes that artificial intelligence, AI, is fundamentally revolutionizing forensic medicine and biological sciences. It's improving the accuracy, the efficiency, and the sheer depth of analysis when it comes to human decomposition. It seems uniquely positioned to handle these huge, complex data sets and spot patterns humans might miss, offering a science the science, as the source puts it.
It really is a new lens. AI provides capabilities we just didn't have before for understanding postmortem changes and, crucially, their broader implications. Let's maybe explore some specific applications where AI is making a massive difference.
Okay, well, the first big one seems to be estimating the postmortem interval, or PMI. That's so crucial in forensic investigations, right?
Yeah.
Knowing how long someone has been deceased.
Absolutely critical.
Yeah.
And what's truly groundbreaking here is how AI analyzes multiple types of data simultaneously. It processes microbiome data, for instance. So it looks at the communities of microbes on and in the body, identifying incredibly subtle patterns and changes over time that correlate with PMI. You have these specialized AI models like convolutional neural networks, CNNs. Think of them as highly advanced pattern recognizers. They can actually interpret microbial abundance heat maps almost like images, spotting minute shifts. And then there are recurrent neural networks, RNNs, which are great with sequences. They conceptualize decomposition as a time series event, predicting how key bacterial species will ebb and flow over time, giving forensic teams new, precise clues.
Wow, so it's seeing patterns in the microbes themselves.
Exactly. And machine learning algorithms can even go a step further and forecast the functional potential of these microbial communities. That could offer forensic hints about the person's lifestyle or maybe environmental exposures before death.
AI is also making waves in radiological imaging, right? Using techniques like vertopsy, postmortem CT, and MRI scans.
Yes, vertopsy is a powerful tool. AI algorithms can automate the process of visualizing gas distribution within the body, which changes predictably after death. They can help detect foreign objects, accurately map skeletal structures. All of this aids in identification, estimating the type of weapon used if foul play is suspected, and getting much more precise PMI determinations. And importantly, it reduces the potential for human error in interpreting complex scans.
Beyond scans, AI is looking at blood too.
It is. AI tools are being trained to predict PMI by analyzing blood biomarkers. Things like lactate dehydrogenase, LDH, or cholesterol levels change in predictable ways after death. AI can leverage blood's rich biochemical information content, and remarkably, deep learning models are even being developed to estimate PMI directly from forensic iris images using multispectral data. In favorable conditions, this could be a non-invasive and highly accurate method.
The iris. That's unexpected.
It is, but the tissues change in subtle ways.
And finally, the source mentions probabilistic models, especially Bayesian approaches. What are those about?
These are statistically sophisticated models. Bayesian approaches explicitly represent how different variables, environmental factors, individual factors affect decomposition rates. They allow for direct, understandable interpretation. Bayesian belief networks, or BBNs, for example, offer a coherent probabilistic reasoning. They don't just give a single number for PMI, they communicate it with an associated degree of confidence, which is crucial in legal settings. Studies using these models have shown predictive power as high as 86% in U.S. data, which is really quite impressive for such a complex process.
So AI isn't just estimating time, it's actually modeling the whole decomposition process.
Exactly. AI models, particularly deep neural networks, are exceptionally good at learning complex statistical relationships from massive biological data sets. This allows them to simulate decomposition under a vast range of different conditions, far more scenarios than we could ever test physically or analyze manually.
The source mentions a tool called AlphaGenome.
Right, that's an example of AI predicting how even single genetic variations might impact biological processes. This is directly relevant to understanding things like the speed of cellular autolysis or how quickly microbial communities proliferate during decomposition based on an individual's genetics. And scientists are now building what they call multimodal foundation models, MFMs. These are designed to process diverse biological data types, DNA, RNA, maybe protein data all at once. The goal is a truly holistic picture of how intrinsic factors influence decay.
Why is AI so uniquely suited for this kind of biological modeling?
It comes down to complexity. Biological phenomena like decomposition are characterized by, well, multidimensionality, lots of interacting factors. There's conditionality, how one factor depends on another, and emergence, where complex patterns arise from simpler interactions. These things resist simple, linear explanations. AI models, especially deep learning ones, function kind of like complex emergent systems themselves. That makes them an ideal tool for studying the dynamic, nonlinear, and often unpredictable nature of decomposition. It's like fighting complexity with complexity.
Okay, but with all this power, especially in sensitive areas like forensics, trust becomes a huge issue. How do we make sure we can rely on these AI findings?
That's a critical point, and the source emphasizes the importance of explainable artificial intelligence, or XAI.
Explainable AI.
Yeah, XAI aims to make the AI's decision-making process transparent, to move these powerful models away from being just opaque black boxes where data goes in and an answer comes out, but we don't know why.
Makes sense. You need to know how it reached the conclusion.
Absolutely. This transparency is paramount for building trust and ensuring accountability, especially in high-stakes fields like forensic science or medicine. There are methods now, like Shape and Lime, that can provide insights into which specific input features, like temperature or a particular microbe's abundance, most significantly influence the AI's prediction. And by integrating domain-specific knowledge from forensic experts or biologists, XAI can help create models that are not only accurate but also robust and interpretable. This accelerates discoveries and ensures AI insights are accessible and genuinely actionable for humans. It's about AI showing its work, essentially.
The source even sketches out this idea of an AI-driven conceptual model, one that could illustrate how decomposition affects everything and everyone involved. That sounds ambitious.
It is ambitious, but it highlights AI's potential. Imagine an AI system integrating vast, disparate data sets, genomics, environmental science, sociology, psychology, even legal frameworks. It would use techniques like causal inference to map actual cause and effect relationships, going way beyond just finding correlations. Then it could apply principles from system dynamics to model how all these interconnected factors evolved over time, revealing hidden feedback loops and emergent behaviors across different domains. And finally, it would structure all this knowledge into something like a knowledge graph, allowing the AI to explain its reasoning and the connections it found in terms humans can understand.
So what kind of connections could a model like that reveal?
Well, it could visually map out the precise biological cascades of decomposition, showing how intrinsic and extrinsic factors guide the process. It could illustrate the ecological interdependencies, how decomposed matter enriches soil, supports plant growth, sequesters carbon, and integrates back into the wider ecosystem, really highlighting decomposition as nature's ultimate recycling mechanism. It could connect that to societal and cultural frameworks, showing how different cultures develop diverse death rituals based on their environment, their values, maybe leading to things like the modern green burial movement.
And the human side.
Psychology.
Definitely. It could illuminate the complex spectrum of human emotions, grief, fear, and the coping mechanisms people develop, like death literacy initiatives or support groups. It could track the evolution of legal and ethical governance around human remains, showing critiques of outdated laws and proposals for reform, like legalizing human composting or demanding online price transparency from funeral homes.
And you mentioned feedback loops.
Yes, that's crucial. How changes in one area, like climate change altering decomposition rates, could ripple through ecological systems, maybe even affecting forensic timelines or cultural practices. And conversely, how growing societal understanding, perhaps fueled by AI insights, could lead to policy changes that impact environmental practices or legal rights. It reveals this incredibly interconnected web. Okay, let's broaden out then. This idea that decomposition isn't just an endpoint, but really an integral part of our whole human experience, a fundamental cycle.
Absolutely. At its core, decomposition is a fundamental, ongoing ecological process. It recycles organic matter, making essential nutrients available for new life to grow. It's nature's primary mechanism for preventing the endless accumulation of dead biomass. It facilitates the continuous cycle of energy and matter that sustains ecosystems. Microbes are the real unsung heroes here. They break down complex organic compounds, releasing vital nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus back into the environment, profoundly influencing things like the carbon cycle and promoting soil health. Without decomposition, life as we know it just couldn't continue. It's that fundamental.
And the source makes this interesting point that decomposition encompasses all aging, decomposing aspects of human developing and decline. So it's not just after death.
Exactly. Think about it. Even when we're alive and healthy, our cells are constantly breaking down and being renewed. There's a continuous cycle of decay and regeneration happening within us all the time. Post-mortem decomposition is simply the final irreversible stage of this universal biological process of breakdown and transformation.
So could we view aging itself as a kind of decomposition in life?
That's a powerful way to think about it, and the source suggests something similar. As we age, our cells accumulate damage, leading to progressive deterioration at the tissue and organ level and increasing vulnerability to disease. This decline is essentially a continuous process of breakdown occurring at the cellular and systemic level. It really does blur the lines between life and what comes after.
And as you said earlier, death itself isn't a singular moment.
No, it's a process. Commencing with the irreversible cessation of brain activity, but concluding perhaps days later with the final breakdown of skin cells. The J-shaped curve of human mortality rates illustrates this continuous transformation too. Mortality is high in infancy, it declines through childhood, rises again in adolescence, and then increases exponentially throughout adulthood due to accumulating risks and diseases. It's a lifelong continuum of change and, eventually, decline.
Moving beyond the biology then, cultures across the world and throughout history have universally seen death as this profound transition. And this has led to an incredible variety of rituals.
An amazing diversity, yes. Rituals designed for ensuring safe passage for the soul, or appeasing spirits, or simply honoring the departed and helping the living cope.
And if we connect this back, these practices show humanity's deep, enduring engagement with the reality of decomposition. It's a universal human response.
Definitely. You see different approaches. There are destruction methods, for example. Cremation is an ancient global custom, often symbolizing a return to elemental forms or a kind of spiritual release. Variations include practices like disposing of cremated remains in sacred rivers, like the Ganges in Hinduism.
And things like sky burial.
Right, sky burial in Tibet is another example. Placing bodies in high places for birds of prey to consume. This reflects specific Buddhist beliefs about impermanence and non-attachment to the physical body, but also practical responses to a landscape where burial or cremation might be difficult.
Then there's the Famadiana ritual in Madagascar, dancing with the dead.
Yes, a unique practice involving exhuming ancestors' remains, rewrapping them in fresh shrouds, and dancing with them. It's believed to help speed the decomposition process and facilitate the spirit's final journey to the next world. It sounds unusual to us, but it's deeply meaningful within that culture.
On the other end of the spectrum, you have preservation methods.
Exactly. The ancient Egyptians are the most famous example, perfecting mummification. They believed preserving the physical body was absolutely essential for the soul's survival and journey in the afterlife. Much later, and more commonly today, embalming became widespread, primarily to slow decay for funeral viewings or to allow for transport of the body over distances.
And now we're seeing a significant shift towards secondary use and ecological alternatives.
Yes, that's a major trend. Interestingly, even in early ancient Greece, they often cremated bodies but preserved the bones afterwards, a kind of secondary use. Today, the modern green burial movement is gaining a lot of traction. It offers eco-friendly options like natural burials, no embalming, biodegradable shroud or casket, direct return to the earth.
And human composting.
Right, or natural organic reduction, NR, as it's formerly known. This process gently transforms human remains into nutrient-rich soil over several weeks. It nourishes new plant growth, actively sequesters carbon, and completely avoids the toxic chemicals used in embalming or the resource use of cremation.
It sounds much more cyclical.
It is. And alongside these methods, there are near-universal practices of ritualistic preparation. Washing the body, anointing it with oils, dressing it in special clothes, adorning it, perhaps. Sometimes orifices are stopped. Grave goods might be included. Funerary feasts are common. And culturally prescribed mourning periods, often involving specific expressions of grief like weeping or wailing, these are universal responses to loss, helping the community process the death. These rituals are deeply embedded in human societies.
Philosophy, too, has obviously wrestled with death for millennia. The source calls it the wound of mortality.
A powerful phrase. You see so many different perspectives. Zongzi, the ancient Chinese Taoist philosopher, had the surprisingly light take, viewing death almost like a going-away party to another phase of existence. Socrates, facing his own execution, famously argued that death was either a dreamless sleep or a passage to another life, so fearing it was illogical. His student, Plato, took it further, thinking death opened the door to a more perfect, ideal world, and saw philosophy itself as a preparation for dying well.
What about Epicurus? He focused on living well now, didn't he?
He did. Epicurus argued the fear of death was irrational and held people back from finding fulfillment in life. Since we don't exist after death, it can't harm us. So, focus on seeking pleasure and avoiding pain in the present. The Stoics, similarly, encouraged meditating on mortality, not morbidly, but as a way to appreciate life and perfect virtues like courage and wisdom. Live each day as if it were your last.
And Schopenhauer linked death to philosophy's origin.
Yes, Arthur Schopenhauer profoundly suggested that the contemplation of death, our awareness of mortality, is the very thing that sparks philosophical inquiry in the first place. It's the ultimate question.
More contemporary thinkers. Heidegger.
Martin Heidegger saw our awareness of death, our being towards death, as fundamental to an authentic existence. Facing mortality forces us to confront the meaning or potential meaninglessness of our lives. J. Krishnamurti offered a different perspective, suggesting we should view life and death not as opposites, but as an inseparable single process or cycle, which might help overcome fear.
In Freud.
Sigmund Freud, from a psychoanalytic view, suggested that denial and the creation of illusions, like belief in an afterlife, are often the ego's defense mechanisms against the overwhelming anxiety of mortality.
So how does the concept of decomposition fit into this philosophical landscape? The source had an interesting take.
It did. It suggests embracing decomposition philosophically as a metaphor, a surrendering of past identities and structures in service of new beings. This perspective offers a, quote, refreshingly triumphant mindset and sees decay as food for new beginnings. It reframes decomposition not as a grim ending, but as a vital, necessary part of renewal. And it invites us to ask what needs to decompose in our own human-built worlds, what outdated ideas, rigid structures, or harmful systems need to break down to make way for something new and healthier.
That's a really powerful reframing. Okay, so shifting to the psychological and societal level. The reality of death and decomposition inevitably triggers profound responses.
Absolutely. It shapes our individual coping mechanisms, our community structures, even public health policies.
And it often starts with fear and taboo, right?
Very often. Death is frequently a taboo subject in many cultures, and this avoidance can actually increase anxiety, fear, and social isolation around dying and grief. Grief itself involves this huge range of intense emotions: denial, sadness, anger, despair. These are normal, healthy responses, but their intensity can be really surprising and overwhelming. And unresolved grief can sometimes contribute to physical or emotional illness down the line.
The fear of death is so deep-seated.
It is. It's arguably one of the fundamental human anxieties, prompting countless philosophies and theologies to help us cope. However, the source emphasizes that open conversations about death and dying, including the biological realities of decomposition, can significantly reduce stigma, fear, and anxiety. It can actually improve mental health outcomes for individuals and communities.
This sounds like the idea of death literacy.
Exactly. Death literacy is about empowering individuals with knowledge, skills, and confidence to navigate end-of-life experiences more effectively. It helps people make informed decisions about care, communicate their wishes, support others who are grieving, and confront their own fears to develop healthier coping strategies.
Does the impact differ much by age?
It can. Very young children might process death differently, sometimes reverting to earlier behaviors or even inventing games about dying as a way to understand it. Intergenerational communication about death can be particularly fraught or uncomfortable, and the death of a child specifically often evokes this overwhelming sense of injustice and a uniquely profound, complex kind of pain for families and communities.
Stepping back again, what are the broader societal implications? Public health, for instance.
Well, counterintuitively, perhaps, the public health risks from dead and decomposing bodies, even after large-scale natural disasters, are generally considered low. Most infectious agents that cause disease don't actually survive long in a deceased body. However, there are risks for workers who handle corpses, potential exposure to things like tuberculosis or blood-borne viruses like hepatitis or HIV, and contamination of drinking water sources by bodily fluids is also a concern that needs management.
What about the odor? Is that a health risk?
The foul odor, while obviously unpleasant and serving as a kind of public alert, is not considered a direct health hazard in itself. Public health guidance generally emphasizes universal precautions for handling bodies, proper and timely disposal, and importantly, respecting social and cultural customs to avoid unnecessary panic or distress in affected communities.
And communities themselves respond in structured ways.
Yes, very much so. Responses to death are guided by cultural norms and established social patterns. Social support networks, family, friends, community groups play an absolutely crucial role in helping individuals mitigate the isolating effects of grief. And we're seeing the rise of community-based initiatives designed to foster open dialogue. Things like death cafes, where people gather to talk about death over coffee, bereavement support groups, and death education workshops are becoming increasingly important in providing supportive environments for these difficult but necessary conversations.
So these death education organizations are really key.
They are vital. They work to enhance public discourse, normalize conversations around death and dying, and promote death literacy across society. The impact is significant. Improved end-of-life decision-making, enhanced emotional support for the grieving, increased community resilience, and ultimately more compassionate communities. You could almost see the positive impact as being inversely proportional to the level of societal taboo surrounding death. More openness equals better outcomes.
And finally, forensic science plays a role here too, beyond just solving crimes.
Definitely. Through its rigorous scientific investigation of death and decomposition, forensic science contributes significantly to societal understanding and a sense of justice. It provides critical, objective information for legal proceedings, medical understanding, and public health awareness. This scientific clarity helps reduce speculation, fear, and misinformation surrounding death.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground: the science, culture, psychology. Now, how does all this translate into rules, ethics, and governance? How do we manage decomposition in society?
Right. Decomposition isn't just a natural process. It's deeply embedded within our legal, ethical, and governance frameworks. And these frameworks are constantly evolving, reflecting shifts in societal values, scientific understanding, and technological advancements.
These rules, as the source calls them, seem to reflect a real balancing act.
They do. It's a complex interplay between public health concerns, protecting individual rights and autonomy, respecting religious beliefs and cultural practices, and, increasingly, considerations of environmental stewardship.
Well, let's look at the evolution of death care laws. Legal systems regulate body disposal everywhere, right?
Yes, universally. And these laws reflect specific societal values. For instance, the expressed preference of the deceased person regarding their body's disposition is often legally recognized and enforced where possible. If no explicit wishes are known, the right to take possession of the body and make arrangements typically falls to the surviving spouse or the legally defined next of kin. And once a body is interred, it's generally considered under the custody of the law. Disinterment, or exhumation, usually requires court control, emphasizing a legal and cultural sense of the sanctity of burial in many places.
But are these laws keeping pace? The source suggests many regulations in the death care industry are seen as outdated or maybe even unnecessary now.
That's a major point of discussion and critique, yes. There are several key areas.
One big one seems to be transparency, or the lack thereof, and the potential for consumer exploitation.
Exactly. Consider the Federal Trade Commission's FTC funeral rule in the U.S. It was last updated way back in 1994. It requires funeral homes to provide a price list if you ask for it in person, but critically, it doesn't mandate posting those prices online.
Which makes comparison shopping really difficult, especially when you're grieving.
Precisely. This loophole hinders easy comparison shopping and allows some less scrupulous funeral homes to potentially charge exorbitant costs to families who are vulnerable and under time pressure. The industry's general reluctance to embrace online price transparency really perpetuates this opacity.
There are also issues around consumer choice and market competition.
Yes. Some state laws, for example, require a licensed funeral director to be involved in specific aspects of death care, even things families might wish to handle themselves, like transporting the body or filing paperwork. This can limit the ability of families to conduct, say, a natural home funeral service if they wish. Regulations might also restrict who is allowed to sell funeral merchandise, like caskets, or even discuss arrangements. This can effectively create local monopolies. Louisiana, for instance, had a law requiring caskets to be sold only through licensed funeral homes, which seemed anti-competitive. Thankfully, that law was overturned in 2013 after a legal challenge.
And some rules seem based on outdated health concerns.
That's another significant factor. Many older funeral laws were enacted during eras when infectious diseases were a much greater public health threat. This led to very strict regulations around body handling, rapid burial, or mandatory embalming in certain circumstances, like an old Pennsylvania law requiring burial within 24 hours unless the body was embalmed. However, modern scientific understanding generally shows a low risk of disease transmission from deceased bodies, especially with universal precautions. This suggests some of these regulations, particularly mandatory embalming requirements, might be unnecessary now, especially given the environmental concerns around embalming fluids.
So what are the proposals for reform? What's changing?
Well, the growing demand for more environmentally sustainable death care options and greater consumer transparency is really driving significant reform efforts. A major trend is the legalization of green alternatives. We mentioned human composting or natural organic reduction that's now legal in 13 U.S. states as of May 2025, and more are considering it. It offers a truly eco-friendly option that avoids toxic embalming chemicals, resource-intensive caskets, and concrete vaults, and it actually sequesters carbon in the soil.
What about water-based cremation?
Yes, alkaline hydrolysis, sometimes called aquamation or water cremation, that's now legal in about half of U.S. states. It uses a chemical process with water instead of fire, resulting in lower energy consumption and emissions compared to traditional flame cremation.
And there are efforts to boost consumer rights.
Definitely. Proposals focus on enhancing consumer rights and mandating price transparency. The ongoing review of the FTC funeral rule, for instance, is specifically looking at potentially requiring funeral homes with websites to post their price lists online. That would be a huge step towards empowering consumers to compare costs easily and effectively.
There's also work on standardizing ethics.
Yes, particularly around the use of human remains in education, research, and medical training. Ethical frameworks are being developed and refined to ensure practices consistently emphasize informed consent from donors, maintaining dignity, and showing respect for the deceased throughout the process.
And other related legislative efforts.
We're seeing legislative efforts addressing broader societal needs related to the end of life. Things like the legalization of physician-assisted death in some states reflect evolving views on patient autonomy and the desire for control over one's dying process. There's also a growing focus on improving access to advanced care planning resources and palliative care services.
So, bringing this all together, what are the big ethical implications here, especially when we look at decomposition through this AI-enhanced lens?
Viewing it through an AI lens really highlights profound ethical implications that demand careful societal governance. It forces us back to that fundamental question, why do humans need human decomposition? And the answer goes beyond just the biology. Firstly, it's an absolute ecological necessity, fundamental to Earth's ecosystems for recycling organic matter and nutrients. Life depends on it. Secondly, it underpins societal order and justice through forensic science enabling PMI estimation, identification of remains, determination of cause of death, all crucial for the legal system and public safety. And thirdly, it provides deep philosophical and cultural meaning, offering frameworks for societies and individuals to process mortality, shaping belief systems, and driving rituals. It facilitates that surrendering of past identities in service of new beings.
The source also tackles a really deep, almost uncomfortable question. Why do humans sometimes break the rules of their own cultures, and in the worst cases, try to eliminate other cultures? It uses AI insights to look at the science of human smarts, or perhaps human flaws.
Yes, this is a fascinating, if sobering, application. AI, by analyzing vast data sets on human behavior, history, and societal interactions, can identify recurring patterns related to bias and aggression. We clearly see the impact of cognitive biases, things like in-group, out-group bias, where people naturally favor their own group and may show prejudice or hostility towards outsiders. This bias, perhaps having deep evolutionary roots related to tribal survival, can contribute significantly to discrimination, conflict, and rule-breaking against perceived others.
Are there biases too?
Oh yes. Confirmation bias, where we actively seek out information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs and ignore evidence that contradicts them. There's the bias blind spot, where we easily recognize biases in other people or groups but fail to see our own. And reactive devaluation, where we automatically dismiss or devalue proposals or ideas simply because they originate from a group or individual we perceive as an adversary, regardless of the idea's actual merit.
Evolutionary models also suggest cooperation and aggression might be linked.
They do. Some models propose that intragroup cooperation, working together within our own group, and intergroup aggression hostility towards other groups may have actually co-evolved. An inclination towards strong cooperation within the group might be coupled with a tendency towards suspicion or aggression directed at outgroups. This can foster a kind of fear-induced belief that defense or even preemptive action is necessary.
So can AI help us manage or mitigate this, not just understand it?
That's the hope and the potential. By modeling these complex human social systems, AI could potentially help predict conditions or factors that might lead to conflict escalation or, conversely, de-escalation. Explainable AI, XAI, could play a role by making these underlying biases more transparent, helping individuals and groups recognize their own cognitive distortions and question their assumptions. By illuminating the potential causal pathways leading to aggression or rule breaking, AI might offer opportunities for targeted interventions, educational programs, policy changes, mediation strategies designed to promote understanding and reduce conflict. It's potentially a tool for fostering greater self-awareness on a societal level.
Ultimately, then, the source suggests that if aspiring to create, quote, a healthy, educated, and good child and foster a balanced universe requires us to really reevaluate our human rules, especially those around fundamental processes like death and decomposition.
Precisely. We need to distinguish between different kinds of rules. Many old rules surrounding death, as we discussed, are rooted in historical beliefs, maybe outdated public health concerns, or sometimes benefit established industries more than consumers or the environment. Then you have the new or improved rules, things like legalizing human composting, mandating online price transparency. These align better with current environmental values, scientific understanding, and consumer rights. There are also likely unnecessary rules, those that create monopolies, restrict choices, or impose burdens without a clear, evidence-based public health or safety justification. These need critical reexamination. And crucially, the source argues we need to consciously add rules, proactive measures that promote death literacy education, ensure equitable access to different end-of-life options, and establish robust ethical guidelines for the use of AI and other advanced technologies in this sensitive domain.
So in this system, who wins and who loses under the current or proposed rules?
Well, in a system with more sustainable practices and transparency, the environment is a clear winner. Consumers benefit from having more choices and clearer information. Society benefits from the clarity and justice provided by robust forensic science. Conversely, under outdated or opaque systems, grieving families can be losers, vulnerable to predatory pricing or limited options. The environment can be a major loser due to toxic embalming fluids, resource depletion from traditional burials or cremations, and non-biodegradable materials. And societies that fail to address underlying biases and conflicts risk perpetuating division and instability. Everyone loses in that scenario.
So creating this balanced universe requires a multi-pronged approach.
Absolutely. It requires holistic education, promoting death literacy, understanding decomposition's vital ecological role, and critically, educating ourselves about our own human biases. It requires promoting health, both physical and mental, through access to sustainable death care options and openly addressing grief and bereavement needs. And it requires governance that actively prioritizes environmental sustainability, protects consumer rights, ensures ethical research practices, and fosters social cohesion. Leveraging AI thoughtfully, particularly its ability to model these complex, interconnected factors, can be a powerful tool to guide policies and societal choices towards a more balanced, compassionate, and ultimately sustainable future.
Wow, this deep dive has really unpacked the profound interconnectedness of human decomposition. It's so much more than just a biological process, isn't it? It's this central nexus where biology, ecology, culture, philosophy, psychology, ethics, law, they all converge.
It truly is. And AI's unique capabilities analyzing vast data sets, modeling these intricate systems, providing explainable insights are fundamentally transforming our understanding of decomposition's significance, past, present, and future. It's offering us a completely new way to see this ancient, universal process.
We've seen how AI is enhancing forensic science, providing answers where previously there was only uncertainty. We've touched on how diverse cultural practices reflect such deep human beliefs and needs when confronting mortality, and how simply having open conversations about death can foster acceptance and resilience.
Exactly. And we've explored how outdated regulations are being challenged, making way for approaches to death care that are more transparent, much more environmentally friendly, and ethically considered. And even how AI might help us understand and maybe mitigate some of our own complex human behaviors, like rule breaking and conflict, by shining a light on our inherent biases.
What's really fascinating, I think, is that this AI-driven analysis ultimately seems to guide us towards a pretty profound recommendation. It's about fostering this holistic view of life and death, recognizing decomposition not as some grim finale, but as an integral, absolutely necessary component of the continuous cycle of life and nutrient regeneration.
That philosophical reframing is key, and it's powerfully supported now by cutting-edge scientific understanding and the push for more ethical governance. Embracing this view can cultivate a much deeper respect for natural processes and, by extension, promote genuine environmental stewardship. It connects our end back to the beginning.
So maybe the final thought to leave with everyone listening is this. How can you personally embrace this understanding of decomposition as a vital life-sustaining process? How might that change how you think about life, death, and our place on this planet? And how can we all contribute to creating that truly balanced universe where human existence is seen as inextricably linked to the health of the Earth? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you feel more informed, maybe a little surprised, and definitely ready to continue your own exploration of this incredible, complex world.
This is DigitView.